and welcome to another episode of Broadcast Movie and TV Talk. Continue on with doing multiple short discussions on the MCU movies that I have not already done discussions on. This episode is going to be about the first two Avengers movies. That means that we obviously have to start with Marvel's Avengers from 2012. I think basically everyone on the planet knows of this movie, regardless of whether or not they've seen it. This was like the biggest comic book movie back in 2012, and I mean, that's not how it is now, but we'll get to that. The whole reason that this was a big deal is because this is the first time that the characters of Iron Man / Tony Stark, Thor, Captain America / Steve Rogers, Hulk / Bruce Banner, Hawkeye, Black Widow, Nick Fury, all them people would all be in the same movie. Oh, and Loki too, because they needed a villain for the movie. It definitely was a hit because one of the big things about the movie like this that Marvel got right is that no one team member got too much screen time over another. That's something that DC has failed to do with Suicide Squad and Justice League. All the characters were written very well, and all of the actors and actresses did very well too. The four main Avengers actually all have an arc because they're all used to doing things on their own and they don't really know each other that well. So they all have to figure out who each other is, what their strengths are, and how to function as a team. Loki is there to make sure that doesn't happen. Loki slowly and methodically uses his wit and charm to tear the Avengers apart, and it does work. Loki's whole reason for being on Earth is because he wants to rule over Earth because he can't rule Asgard. He has a scepter that he uses to control the minds of people. This is what makes the movie so great, is how Loki knows that when the Avengers are working together, they are unstoppable. But if you tear them apart, you can do whatever you want, or something like that. That's really the character arc that our heroes go through, is being torn apart by Loki because they learn that they need to come together and work together to defeat Loki and his alien army. The action is great, the comedy is great, and I don't know what else to say. I guess I would say that Black Widow and Hawkeye are just kind of there because the other Avengers are there too, but I feel like they don't do as much as the others do, but that's just a small thing. This is a movie that still holds up today and can be enjoyed today and really doesn't get boring no matter how many times you have seen it. Marvel's The Avengers is a great movie and very enjoyable as well. And of course that leaves the other one we have to talk about for Avengers Age of Ultron. This is the Avengers movie that is not liked as much out of the four. I think that's because the villain, Ultron, pretty much does the same thing as Loki. He has to turn the Avengers against themselves because otherwise he can't do his plan, I guess. It may also be because Ultron tries too hard to be funny in a villainous manner like Loki did, but Loki at least looks like a person, despite being from Asgard. And that means people in the audience can relate to Loki in some way. It doesn't work with Ultron, because he's a robot with the ultimate goal to wipe out all of humanity. The way that Ultron tears the Avengers apart is having the new characters of Scarlet Witch mess with their minds, since that's her power. The other new character in this movie is Quicksilver. Yep, people were not too fond of that because he was in one of the X-Men movie, or some of them, I don't really know. And everyone says that the X-Men version of Quicksilver was better in the X-Men movie, but I don't care because the X-Men movies are awful except for Logan. Yep, I said it. Quicksilver is the only hero who dies in this movie because they have to show that heroes are not invincible, and that's important, I guess. Ultron is a creation of Tony Stark and Bruce Banner, but mostly Tony. This is because Tony wants to have something in place to be able to protect everyone on Earth from any threat from anywhere. He goes as far as to implement his Iron Legion with better AI, and then creates Ultron, who quickly, through the internet, sees that humanity has a lot of violence, and the best thing to do to protect humans is to eliminate all of them. I don't know, Ultron's motivations are very weak. This movie has some big action scenes like the Hulk vs. Hulkbuster one, and really the entire end of the movie where the Avengers are fighting the robot army for a while. So, to combat Ultron, they take Jarvis and put him into something, but Captain America doesn't want him to do that because of what created Ultron. And then Thor crashes the party and imparts his lightning electricity into Tony's creation, and bam, Vision is born. What happened to Thor? Well, he went back to Asgard to have a vision that basically told him to create the being that they named Vision. Vision is basically the MCU version of Superman. So, where the movie begins to fall apart is with how Ultron wants to carry out his plan for global extinction. He takes a sizable portion of the city they're in, I don't remember what the name of it is, and flies it up into the air and wants to drop it down with the goal that it will hit the surface at a velocity that will wipe out all the people on the planet and basically destroy everything. The other problem with the movie is that at one point it just turns into the Avengers fighting a bunch of robots and not much else is really happening. I mean, they have a slow motion part where everyone is tearing some robots apart and it's not that exciting. Honestly, it's not as bad as a movie as people make it out to be. It is the lowest point of the four Avengers. Is it the lowest point of the four Avengers movies? Yeah, because it really only gets better after this movie. I feel that the problems from this movie kind of stem from how the first movie was so big that they really needed to do all they could to top it, but not so much that the Avengers movies following it are bigger than they need to be. Perhaps Ultron was not the correct villain to have for this movie, but they also wanted to have Vision in the MCU because he has an Infinity Stone in his head, and that will tie into the rest of the MCU. Avengers Age of Ultron is a good movie and is enjoyable too. There you have it. That's my discussion on the first two Avengers movies. I already talked about Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame in full, so if you want to hear my thoughts on those movies, they're on the Movie and TV Talk Movie Discussions playlist. That's all I have to say, so if you're out of the conversation, leave a comment below. As always, thanks for listening, and goodbye.